It's been a while since I've done a Facebook Live, and I'm excited to talk to you today and share some thoughts that I have. I want to talk about my favorite subject, which is God's presence, and that, God isn't far off somewhere. He's right there with you, right there in your room or your car or wherever you happen to be right now. You're going to have to excuse my cat. She's going to end up sitting on my lap. And since the Garden of Eden, God wanted a connection with us. He wants to walk and talk with us. He wants to have a personal relationship of conversation and sharing and hearing each other's hearts, and that knowing that you matter to him, and that he really does want a relationship with you, and it's not some religious process that we have to go to where I do all the right things and I earn his approval. It's God wants to have a real one-on-one relationship with you. And there's so many things that can get in the way of that, and most of those have to do with our past, unfortunately. The things that we experience through our other relationships become filters that we see, lenses that we see him through based on how we've experienced people, especially important people in our life. And through issues and things that come up in human relationships, we end up with lies we believe about ourselves, lies we believe about him, fears that we have, things that we create to protect ourselves because of the wounds that we've received from people. Those same self-protective things end up in the way between our connection with God. And my passion is to see those things removed so that we can experience him the way that that Adam and Eve did in the garden, and the way many others have. I've been in prayer lines before where everybody around me is being touched by God, and I'm standing there stoically feeling like, what's wrong with me? Why is everybody else being touched and I feel absolutely nothing? And I didn't really realize at the time, but what was going on was my mind's need to control things was actually causing interference into me fully experiencing him. Any kind of a relationship that we have, it requires a letting go of so many things. And when it comes to our connection with God, it requires a letting go of those things that we've created to protect ourselves with. And an example I want to use is the Israelites at Mount Sinai, and God called them all to come, and he wanted to encounter them, and he had them become prepared so that he could meet with them. And because his presence was so powerful, the mountain was shaking, it was smoking, it was thunder and lightning. Can you imagine how scary that must have been? The thing that interfered, though, was that they didn't understand that God loved them. It felt like their history of being slaves in Egypt, and the gods of the Egyptians taught them to fear God, to fear other people of power having connection to them. It was no wonder, they experienced true cruelty. And so those past experiences interfered with their ability to see God clearly. And they had forgotten that this is the God who loved them, who saw their plight, who wanted them out from under the tyranny, who delivered them, who provided food and water for them, who had made a path for them. And they couldn't remember that their history was louder. And some of the common things that was probably going on with them are still affecting us and our connection with him. So I want to debunk some of those lies and to help you find freedom from anything that might be keeping your connection from him being everything that it should be. Jesus paid such an incredible price for us to have connection with the Father. That was the whole deal. The whole thing that Jesus did was to give us connection. And so I'm going to talk about 5 different perspectives from the past that could be interfering with your ability to experience the fullness of God's presence in your life, and his touch and his voice and his nearness. So anyway, I'm going to start with the first one is that God is demanding, and my cat's entertaining from behind there. God is demanding and unpleasable. You know, when you grow up in a culture, either a family culture or where you live, or a spiritual culture that teaches you that there's this list of rules that you have to perform and that you have to complete in order to find approval. Like, I have to be good enough and I have to do things that will that those over me will approve of in order to find me good enough. And so in that kind of an environment, you learn I'm not good enough. No matter what I do, I still can't achieve that approval. And oftentimes it correlates with connection. Like, I have to perform in order to get connection from the important people in my life. And God doesn't require our performance. The righteous requirement of the law was paid by Jesus, and so there isn't a requirement for us to connect with him. When we do all the right things in order to feel like, okay, you know, when you come into God's presence and all you can think of is your long list of ways that you have failed him, I imagine that breaks his heart. I'm thinking of my own kids, you know, if they, or my grandkids, if they wanted to sit with me, but first they had to apologize for a whole bunch of things that they feel like they did to offend me before they could even come near me, it would break my heart. It would feel so disconnecting. And it breaks God's heart too. The only way to get to overcome things that maybe are needing work in our own hearts is in that connection. He's the one that helps heal us and redeem us and make us righteous. And so anyway, that's the first one. The second one is that God is unstable. I imagine with that mountain shaking and quaking, it must have been like, God is unstable. And if you've had close relationships with people who were, you know, you just never knew what you were going to encounter when they walked in the door. Like, who am I going to find? Who am I going to see? Who's going to walk in the door today? Or what am I going to find when I get home? And I have to adjust myself around. I have to kind of navigate my environment and then adjust myself around it so that I can know what I need to do in order to keep peace and walk on eggshells. When that's your experience, and it's easy to interpret God in that same place, like God is unstable. And I have to kind of find out, is he okay right now? Is he happy with me? You know, what do I have to do? How do I have to adjust me? What do I have to work around in order to keep him happy? And God's not unstable. He's not had a broken history or anything in his past that is wounded. So we don't have to jump through the hoops. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's completely stable. The third perspective that interferes with our connection with God is that I'm too insignificant to be of value to him. And when we're neglected, or we're seen as invisible, or our needs are eclipsed by the other people in our lives, we've learned to shut ourselves down and to not have any needs. I don't have any needs. I can't afford to have any emotional space in this relationship because the other person can't handle it. Then you learn to just shut it down, and the lie that comes from that is that I'm just not important. And so if I'm not important, then why would anybody want connection with me for the sake of connecting with me? They must want something from me. And so God, that's not God. You are of infinite value. He paid everything that he had to have that connection with you. And so you are valuable, and he does see you. You know, there's multiple scriptures in the Bible that talks about how he sees you. He sees you right there where you're sitting, right there with whatever you're doing. He sees you, and he's not angry at you. He's not upset at you. He's not disappointed in you. Those are all lies. Right now, where you are is enough for him to connect to. And together you'll work on all the other things in life that needs to be changed and the other things in you that need to be changed. But right now where you are, he doesn't need you to perform in order for him to love you. The fourth one is God just wants to use me for his own selfish desires. And if you've had relationships that are self-centered or relationships with narcissists, then it's easy to come to the conclusion that, you know, I revolve around the other person. They're the only one that gets to have needs around here, and I don't get to have any. And I'm just being used. And so I'm going to build some sort of protection around my heart in order to not feel used all the time. And so whatever that barrier is that we build to protect ourselves from those kinds of relationships, actually it's the barrier around our heart that's built. And it affects all relationships, including our relationship with God. And it's not like discriminatory where I can have, you know, it's protecting me here, but I'm totally fine with the Lord unless you've had that healed or unless you've had a revelation from him to show you that he's safe. And he is safe. He's not self-centered. He's sacrificial. And so realizing that I don't have to protect myself from his selfishness, because he's not selfish. He's the absolute opposite of selfish. And the fifth and final one is that God doesn't follow through on his promises. You know, I've been guilty of building my own set of expectations of how I think God should perform for me. And I've been guilty of creating some fantastical romantic idea of how my life should go, and a sense of an entitlement that I shouldn't have any kinds of hardships. And any of you that know me know that I've been through some really hard things. And so working through disappointment was a real key aspect of my connection with him. To, you know, it was my own perceptions and my own expectations and my own imaginations of how I thought things should be, and the interpretation of people in my life who had disappointed me before, filtering into my connection with him and seeing him as somebody who disappoints me. Also, if you believe that you are a disappointment, then you'll deal with feeling that others let you down. And so breaking free of that lie that I am a disappointment, or that God disappoints and doesn't follow through on his promises. And God is faithful, that the things he says he will do, he will do. And so I've learned that I had to let go of my expectations of the way things should be, so that I could see all the things that I've missed. You know, when one of the keys to that is when you're thinking about all the ways that God didn't show up, it eclipses all the things that he has done. And I've had to purposely write lists and scroll through all the ways that God showed up, which is so much more than the few times that I feel like he failed me. And I've talked about this before, that we all have kind of a big red button of things from our past that when it gets put, it's kind of like this filter that you see through. And mine was always abandonment. And so it was easy for me to see through that filter of abandonment that, yes, God has abandoned me too. It's a complete lie. It's not true. And so, you know, if you read through the story of the Israelites, you'll see how they feel like God abandoned them, and they would groan and complain, even though, man, he's bringing water out of the rocks and he's bringing manna from heaven. And then when they got tired of the manna, he's bringing them quail, and that still wasn't good enough. And they just, you know, their expectations of how they thought it should be, you know, well, God's going to deliver me out of Egypt, and then it's going to be this Rosie tiptoeing through the tulips, and it ends up where he says, I'm going to bring you a land flowing with milk and honey. And the land that he gives them, then it's inhabited by all of these other people. And it's like, okay, he had them keeping the land fertile for them so that they could go in and take what belonged to them, but they had to fight for it. And this planet that we've been given, God said, here's my promise to you, now go get it, bring my kingdom to earth as it is in heaven. And we just want it to be where it's just handed to us, like they thought, just hand me this beautiful place without me having to do anything for it. And that's not realistic. So anyway, if you found yourself in any of these, just take a moment to forgive. Like, I forgive the people who taught me these lies. Go back and listen to it and hit pause when you hit the one that hits home, and then just take a moment to forgive those people and those relationships that taught you that dysfunctional concept of your relationship with God. And then invite him in to just say, Father, I invite you in to show me the truth. I want a relationship with you. I want that intimate connection with you, to where you're not far off somewhere, but that you're right here beside me, doing life with me, and that I'm not alone. So I just want to release a blessing over you. So Father, I just thank you for this person right here, sitting here watching this video. I thank you for your presence and your power being right there to remove the barriers. And I just say, barriers be removed. Broken lenses be removed in Jesus' name. And I just ask, God, that you would show them, give them divine revelation, that whatever breakthrough needs to happen right now would happen, that they could see you and experience you and know you in your fullness. And I just bless you. I bless you in your journey, and take care. Bye.